am here at the Global African Diaspora Symposium, GADS 2023 at the Conference Center, Presidential Villa, Abuja. The symposium is themed Building Stronger Connections Between Africa and the Diaspora. It seeks to create an interface between Africa and its diaspora to maximize partnership and collaboration. The two-day symposium is being organized by the African Diaspora Alliance, ADA, and the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, OACPS, in conjunction with the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, NIDCOM, and the Directorate of Technical Cooperation in Africa, DTCA, with an anticipated audience of about 5,000 participants globally. Please stay for more on the auspicious event. And on our program today, we have our ANPA doctors with health tips. And of course, we did not forget our diasporan of the moment with Shalewa Ajila presenting. I am Koinsola Adetumbi, your host, and this is your favorite program, The Diaspora. Please stay with us. Now let's begin with the symposium convened to chart Africa's roadmap for Africa's development. Enjoy the proceedings.
The 2023 Abuja Symposium is therefore seeking to foster new connections to a stronger global African diaspora partnership and also to commemorate the International Decade for People of African Descent, IDPAD, which took place in September 2018 in Accra and Cape Coast, Ghana. This year's symposium, and I hope others in the near future, will provide opportunities for Africa to engage with its diaspora and build upon the first African Diaspora Symposium, ADS 2020, which held in Nairobi, Kenya, in December 2020, and also the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States Diaspora Forum, OACPS Diaspora Forum, hosted at the 10th Summit of OACPS Heads of State and Government held in Luanda, Republic of Angola, on the 7th of December 2022. This two-day international event, being championed by the African Diaspora Alliance and the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, would not have been possible without the collaborative efforts of the following co-organizers: the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, OACPS, and the Directorate of Technical Cooperation in Africa, DTCA, both under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria, with mandates of engaging with diaspora for national development, both nationwide and continent-wide, respectively.
We hope the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a major pillar in Africa, and the African community across the globe, to help driving this agenda within the AU and other organs, the OACPS, CARICOM, and others, so that this agenda goes higher and higher. I well know, Excellencies, diasporas have become the new sheriff in town. I call them that because we will be hearing from the Africa Development Bank, but the President did say last year diasporas brought into the continent a whooping $100 billion. Of course, most of that going into Egypt, 30 billion, 25 billion coming into Nigeria, 9 billion into Morocco, and so on and so forth. For Kenya, my country, the $4.2 billion that came in is more than what we earned from 3 of our top agricultural exports, tea, coffee, and horticulture put together, and 3 times what we get from tourism. So diaspora rightly are the new sheriff in town. The government of the Republic of Kenya, together with our diaspora formations and corporates, have set a target to double that figure by 2030 to $10 billion. It sounds it sounds better when it's put in Kenya shillings. Diasporas bring in $500 billion Kenya shillings, and we have a target to bring 1 trillion Kenya shillings into the economy by the year 2030. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, even as we haggle about $1 trillion shillings, our brothers and sisters, what some of us refer to as historical diasporas, their African American alone has got a spending capacity $1.2 trillion. And often Brother Malcolm and Sister Janine say, why do you haggle about $1 trillion shillings or $1 trillion naira? Talk about $1 trillion. Okay? That's the capacity that the Africa's diaspora across the globe can bring in.
In keeping with the theme of this symposium, it is appropriate to posit that Africa has indeed reached a critical juncture requiring a change of narrative about Africans and Africa. As the continent that records consistent net outflow of financial resources, it is heartening to note that African economies have received steady financial inflows from Africans in diaspora, far in excess of official development aid and foreign direct investment. The value of remittances from the African diaspora doubled from 37 billion in 2010 to 87 billion in 2019, reaching 95.6 billion in by 2021. Egypt and Nigeria are among the top 10 remittance recipients globally, with 31.5 billion and 19.2 billion respectively in 2021. Nigerian diaspora home remittances in 2021 of $19.2 billion was 4 times the country's foreign direct investment and contributed about 6.1% of our annual GDP. We need to change the narratives, however, and redirect inflows of remittances to productive ventures away from consumption. It is also time to change the narrative about Africa being a resource-rich continent. Africa should not be about export of natural resources only. Tom Burgess, in his book, The Looting Machine, says Africa accounts for 13% of the world's population and just 2% of its cumulative GDP. But it is the repository of 15% of the planet's crude oil reserves, 40% of its gold, and 80% of its platinum. The richest diamond mines are in Africa, as are significant deposits of uranium, copper, iron ore, bauxite, and by one estimate, Africa has 1/3 of the world's hydrocarbon, and mineral resources.
We're all gathered as African diaspora. It's very important that we work together as Africa. I was talking to my sister from Ghana. I said, sometimes all these social media children will start fighting. Ghana and Nigeria, there's no competition. What we need to do is come together as Africans. Ghana has a huge diaspora they're encouraging, so is Nigeria, so is Uganda, so is Rwanda. So why can't we as Africans just tap into these enormous opportunities and potentials? And that is part of the reason why we're gathered here today. As long as the world looks down, or as long as Africa is not developed the way it should be developed, the world will continue to look down on everybody as a black person, whether you're in America or Jamaica. So we have to ensure that we build this continent. And the diaspora can do this. The diaspora has all the potentials. Nigeria diaspora are the most educated immigrants anywhere in the world. America knows that and they say it. The same thing with our diaspora all over the world. So what are we doing about that? My brother, His Excellency the Indian High Commissioner, we've been exchanging notes. The way India has, worked with its diaspora. When Ireland was in recession, 1,000 Irish got together and saved Ireland from recession. The African diaspora needs to be engaged more. The African diaspora needs to pay more attention to the African continent, and I'm glad AFDB is here. And I heard Mr. Oruma speaking somewhere where he spoke passionately about the African diaspora. So this is about us coming together. Wherever we are in the world, we must make sure that Africa does not lag behind. Africa must take its place where it should be, on the top of the mountain. We have everything. We have the resources. We have, most importantly, the human capital. So what are we doing about it? The best professionals in the world are Africans. Africans are all over the world developing world economies. Come home and develop your own continent. Come home and develop your country.
The Global African Diaspora Symposium is taking place at an auspicious and promising time, especially as the 21st century has been earmarked as the century of human mobility and migration. It is estimated that there are more than 250 million international migrants, and over 40 million of them are of African origin. African migration has been on a steady upward trajectory for the past 2 decades. And given continuing strong push factors, that trend is expected to continue. And this figure is too significant, I believe, to be ignored in our development aspirations as Africans. I therefore appreciate the theme of this symposium, which is building stronger connections between Africa and the global diaspora.
I wish to pay glowing tributes to representatives of other African countries who have come all the way to contribute to the fostering of a new and stronger global diaspora that will provide an opportunity for Africa to engage with its diaspora. This symposium is very important as it is expected to build upon the outcomes of the first African Diaspora Symposium held in Nairobi, Kenya in December 2020, as well as the first Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States Diaspora Forum, hosted at the 10th Summit of the OACPS Heads of State and Government on December 7, 2022 in Luanda, Republic of Angola, with a view to creating a framework for maximizing the engagement between Africa and the diaspora towards achieving sustainable development. The African diaspora, which is an integral part of the global diaspora community, is a formidable constituency worthy of consideration in relation to Africa's development. The development contribution in Africa is far more than remittances. The diaspora contributes in many important ways, such as in international circles, business joint ventures, technological transfer, cultural exchange, religious networks, and institutional linkages.
It is with utmost delight that I welcome you all to the Global African Diaspora Symposium, GADS 2023, holding in Abuja, Nigeria. Today represents yet another very important milestone in the history of our nation in hosting the rest of Africa and its diaspora. The choice of Nigeria as the host country is timely and historic in the face of our political transition to a new government presently. This symposium, being the second in the series, takes on some very key objectives, such as to create an interface for networking among Africa and other diaspora around the world, to promote the implementation and institutionalization of Pan-Africanism at the United Nations through the celebration of the International Decade for People of African Descent, hoping that it becomes a platform for the promotion of the global diaspora as key resource for positively projecting and developing Africa. This is why the theme of this symposium, building stronger connections between Africa and the global diaspora, is apt under the present world order and being in tune with current realities on the global scene. It is imperative for Africans at home and in the diaspora to connect and forge a common front, and also lay down strategic frameworks to address the challenges arising in the new world emerging order. The best approach to connect the diaspora for sustainable development is to harness its vast human and material resources wherever they may be, whether it be within the continent or in the diaspora. It is expected that the objectives of this symposium lead to outcomes that portray to the entire African diaspora a palpable sense of belonging and homecoming, with an ease of entry and movement for the diaspora into and within Africa.
Many thanks to those who made time to attend the hybrid event. And now let's take a short break with Boy Alinko.
Ha! Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin.
Eh?
You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
Welcome back. If you must travel, travel legitimately. Now over to our health tips with our ANPA doctor.
I'm here today to speak to you about fibroids. Fibroids are a benign growth that occurs in the uterus of women of reproductive age. It's a very common benign tumor that occurs, and the symptoms may range from it being asymptomatic to producing very large tumors that could be seen even externally, making a woman appear to be pregnant. It's unclear why people have fibroids. However, it's so common that even in asymptomatic women, if you were to do ultrasounds, you may pick up the beginnings of some small fibroid tumors. Very often, fibroids have no symptoms. However, their symptoms could range from abnormal menstrual cycle, heavy bleeding, irregular bleeding, masses that cause pain or dysmenorrhea during the period, large masses that are visible externally that make one appear to have a protruding growth from the abdomen. The size of the fibroid is not necessarily reflective of how significant the symptoms are. For instance, a large number of women could walk around with very large fibroid tumors and they don't feel anything or have any symptoms from it. Also, alternatively, patients could have fibroids that are not that large that are significantly symptomatic. The treatment for fibroid uterus is directly related to the symptoms that they cause. The fibroid tumors could be located within the cavity of the uterus, within the muscle of the uterus, or externally and or even pedunculated, so they're attached to the uterus by a stalk. Depending on the location of the fibroids, the symptoms could be reflective. For instance, a fibroid could obstruct the fallopian tube and then be subsequently associated with infertility. Also, a fibroid that is located within the lining of the uterus could be associated with very heavy periods, or in some cases, unfortunately, recurrent miscarriages. Depending on the size and the symptoms of the fibroids, treatment would then appropriately be targeted. For instance, if the problem with the fibroids is heavy bleeding and abnormal periods, taking pills such as oral contraceptive pills could help regularize the bleeding and control symptoms. When fibroids are large enough to be identifiable on exam or causing symptoms due to the size by a mass effect and or pressure, they may require removal by surgery. Removing fibroids from the uterus is called a myomectomy, which is a surgery that should never be performed without significant caution. A myomectomy, which is cutting into the uterus to remove the fibroid, could be associated with significant bleeding and the need to have a blood transfusion. Usually when one has fibroids, it's never one fibroid. It's usually several different fibroids. And so if surgery is performed, it would be associated with the removal of several fibroids. Again, once you remove the fibroids, you could also have them return, as in regrow. So surgery should not be performed unless very significant caution has been looked at to see that a patient is an appropriate candidate for surgery. If a woman has completed her childbearing, she may be a candidate for definitive management, which could include removal of the uterus itself. Usually, removing the uterus for fibroid uterus would allow for the ovaries, which produce hormones, to stay in place, as removing the ovaries too early could be associated with premature menopause, and that could have other subsequent symptoms. It's very important that if the symptoms are associated with heavy bleeding, this could make the patient anemic, in which case control of the bleeding with medications such as the pill, as earlier mentioned, Depo-Provera, sometimes GnRH agonists such as Depo-Lupron could be required to help control the bleeding, and then supplementation with iron and vitamin C to control anemia, because heavy bleeding from fibroid uterus could cause significant anemia, which could affect activities of daily living to a significant degree. Thank you.
Thank you to our AMPA doctor for always being there. Now over to our Diasporan of the Moment with Shaliwa Ajila presenting.
Our Diaspora of the Moment is Professor Dr. Samuel Achilefo. Dr. Samuel is a Nigerian-born scientist and medical researcher who has pioneered both fundamental and applied research in science, engineering, and medicine. Dr. Samuel is a Michelle M. Ter Pogosin Professor of Radiology and Vice Chair for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Mallinckrodt Institute of Radiology, Washington University School of Medicine. He holds joint appointments as a Professor of Medicine, Biochemistry, and Molecular Biophysics and Biomedical Engineering. He currently serves as the Director of the Washington University Molecular Imaging Center and the privately funded Theranostic Innovation Program. He is the co-director of the Center for Multiple Myeloma Nanotherapy and co-leader of the Oncologic Imaging Program of the Alvin J. Siteman Cancer Center at Washington University. He invented high-tech infrared goggles which enable doctors to see cancer cells during surgery, thereby ensuring that no tumor cells are left unremoved. The goggles generate a blue light when they spot the cancer cells, making the surgery more effective. Dr. Samuel has been recognized for his groundbreaking research and invention with over 30 local and international honors and awards. These accolades include the prestigious Breton Chance Biomedical Optics Award in 2019 at SBIE, the Carl and Gertie Corey Faculty Achievement Award in 2018, and the St. Louis Innovator Award in 2015, and the Medical Innovation Award in 2014. Congratulations, Professor. We celebrate you as our Diaspora of the Moment.
This has been the first part of the Global African Diaspora Symposium. Join us same time next week for part 2. And I remain your host, Koinsola Adetumbi. See you next time.